You've entered the Killzone. The Killzone. Frontline Gaming presents the Killzone Podcast. Real talk for competitive Kill Team 40K tactics, strategy, and news you need to know from some of today's top players. Tune in every other week for brand new episodes of the Killzone Podcast.
Like the intro just said, you have entered the Killzone. Welcome back, returning listeners, and those of you new to the podcast. This is Bearded 40K, and I'm joined by Emmanuel Mitsidikos from Strategic Advantage. We've got a great show for you guys coming up.
In this episode, we cover the concept of tier lists and kill team. When are they good, and when are they a trap? And could a tier list actually force you to miss the joy of making an off-meta team?
Interesting stuff. Stay tuned, guys. All that and more is coming your way after we pay some bills with these messages.
At Frontline Gaming, we make the best tabletop gaming mats in the universe. Our mats are durable, rollable, foldable, wipeable, and storable. Oh, and they look damn great, too. Join the thousands of tournament regulars and garage gamers who use our mats to bring their gaming surfaces to life. To ensure quality, Frontline Gaming mats are custom-made one at a time. Printed with high-quality ink, our immersive designs stay crisp and are available in a wide range of styles and sizes. So whether you're playing a war game or a skirmish game, whether you're fighting over an alien tundra, fantastical forest, or real-world setting, there's a great-looking battlefield for you. Our gaming mats are printed on extremely durable neoprene backing, so they won't slide around the table, and they're thick enough to stay flat, protecting what's underneath and allowing for slight uneven surfaces. We know from experience that an easily portable gaming surface is just better. Every mat comes with a sturdy nylon zip-up bag for storage and transportation. Whether your next battle is in your home or at the local game store, you'll be able to unroll your FLG mat and get gaming right away. Our products are all made and tested by passionate gamers at Frontline Gaming HQ right here in the USA. It's time to take your battlefield to a new level. Frontline Gaming, champions of tabletop.
And we are back with some banter, some hobby hangout for just a moment. Wait, that's on brand for you guys over at Strategic Advantage, right?
That was like our stopgap. Our stopgap when I was like, what's this channel gonna be? What are we gonna do? We hobby every Monday. Let's just do some hobby and hangs. Yeah, I think at most we had 20 people watching those, and then it just stopped me from cursing like a sailor whenever I would spill non oil. So, yeah, those are no longer. But we did resurrect the channel, and I think what we got going is really good now. But yeah, how's your hobby been the past couple?
I have been buckling down for a day that I'm both excited for and kind of nervous for, which is tomorrow. Actually, I'm supposed to go to Long Beach with a trusty old airbrush and bang out many copies of Chalnath and the Octarius. And
no, you said it right the first time.
Yes, okay. Some of the Rise of stuff basically for the Strategicon comp that's coming up in Los Angeles in May. It's coming up really fast now. It's like May 27th is day one of the weekend. So
yeah. And then you're going to that tournament. You're going to be doing teaching games, and you're going to be playing at that one. And I am going to be bookending the other side of California. That same weekend, I'm going to be up at Bay Area Open. Alex and I are flying up there Thursday. Obviously, I think this this episode will drop the Monday after both of those tournaments. Clearly, we're not recording this that weekend because we are busy. Uh-oh. So stay tuned for a BAO and Strategicon episode afterwards. But we're talking a little bit of what's happening in the future. But yeah, you were mentioning offering to help with a lot of that terrain on our last app, and the day is rapidly approaching, isn't it?
Yeah, it's basically, I have just been compiling little things like, okay, an extra hose in case it dies, because that's the one point of failure I've had since 2015 with this airbrush. So I'm like, if it does decide to go again, there's a thing, and just like little things, tester's dull coat to hopefully preserve it. So, it can the hope is that this is used over many tournaments, over time. So just trying to preserve it for them.
Hold up. So I was under the impression that Tester's Dull Coat, which is my favorite varnish, is out of production, and I have like 12 cans that I just scooped up off of eBay once I heard that, and I paid way too much for it. Does it still exist, and did I get scammed?
I don't know. I just looked on Amazon. I had heard nothing about it and just went and got a can because it's like an old trusty for me as well.
Yes, it's my favorite one. I've used the Army Painter one. I've used the Munitorum Varnish, the GW one. I've used basic Rattle Can one, and the Tester's Dull Coat has always been my favorite. I got Airbrush Varnish from Vallejo, and I'm going to try that one out on a test model to see if I like it. But the Tester's Dull Coat, I think, gives a perfect balance between matte and preserving some of the sheen, in my opinion. And I like the tiny cans, easy to use.
Yep, I found out about it for the Stan Winston guys. I was doing some stuff with, I believe it was Stan Winston stuff. I was doing stuff for The Walking Dead, behind the scenes, some camera stuff back in the day, and this stuff was everywhere. It's like they will do like very thin little things, seal it in dull coat, and then a little bit more and seal it in dull coat, and so that's where I found out about it, was for skin tones, and started using it. But I swear that stuff is how my Gene Stealer cult survived a sign falling on them that time. It's like without a chip or anything like that, they were just like good to go. Thank goodness for dull coat.
Nice.
So love that stuff.
So my hobby has been pretty fun. I finished just about my first pirate grot for my Corsairs, or my Rotten Octopus crew. Did the water effects and everything like that. I learned the hard way that you need to build up the water effects because I put way too much of the...
Oh, okay.
And it's got like a nougat center now.
Okay.
The centermost that's right up against the rock, never completely dried. So it's all hard and sealed, but then you see some faint wispy white deep down there. And honestly, it works well, like churning water right up against the rock. So I'm going to pretend well, I say that I'm going to pretend it's intentional, except I tell the whole internet that I made a flub. But it actually looks all right. I'm going to try not to do that for the rest of them, so I'm learning how to use it appropriately. But that was fun. I started off with the Wayseeker because I love the pose that I gave that guy. He's standing on a rock. He's almost like Aquaman holding the staff in the water, standing up there triumphantly. He looks amazing. So I got that done. And then I said, you know what? I need a base of operations for the BAO Narrative Day. And I've been sitting on a Big Ed Boss Bunka since it came out right before or right around Octarius came out in the beginning of I'll show you a picture of this, Chris, and listeners can go ahead and Google it themselves.
Oh, wow.
But
goodness.
You could essentially, it's deployable terrain for Big Hammer for proper 40K. And I don't know if you can still do it, but people are putting it on a teleporter. Just plopping it in using the stratagem in 40K with a bunch of flash kits in there, just like a budget drop pod. I don't know if it actually is legal or not. I don't think that might have gotten errated out or something like that. But it's a perfect base of operation for my Red Skull Commandos. And I'm making like a desert theme kind of metal sheet that all my guys are going to be magnetized onto. I have like rocks glued onto it. I'm going to texturize it. And then there's magnets on the bottom of this Big Ed Boss Bunka. So that way it'll plop on the metal sheet. It'll go in a display case that I've already lit up. And that's going to be my base of operations for BAO. So quite literally nothing that has anything to do with tournament prep, except it's making me so happy.
Look at you, man. This is that's a pretty neat little little concept and a bunch of little allied kind of projects coming together into one thing there.
Yeah. Neat. I'm super excited about it. It's gonna look pretty stunning. And I gotta say, my favorite white paint has to be this Army Painter matte white. It is amazing. I've hated white paint. Always hated white paint. It's always chalky, especially the ones that come in GW pots. But this Army Painter matte white, 2 thin coats is all you need. Always super, super smooth. Never had any chunky bits that I had to wipe away. So highly recommend if you want like a nice pure white. It's great. That one and Pale Sand, if you want a base coat with Pale Sand and then matte white over that. Pale Sands of Vallejo color. Really nice and opaque as well. So yeah, those were my hobby things. And yesterday, I had a fun time at the LGS. We had 8 Kill Team players there. We could have had an RTT if we wanted to.
Yeah.
Played with Dakota. You know him. He's the guy that does a lot of the terrain that you see on a lot of the tournament tables. Played with him, demoed some of his new terrain. He's got some cool stuff down the pike. It's his MDF style terrain that looks like Octaria stuff. It's or Octarius and what's the Imperialis one? That's Nakmund, right? No,
I believe so.
No, Chalnath.
Chalnath. That's the one I couldn't remember earlier too.
Yes. Yeah, so he's got some stuff that mimics the with doors and all that kind of stuff. Mimics it pretty closely, and it was really fun to play on. I enjoyed. One of his things has a strip club in it, and one of my DACA boys, I posted on my Instagram a DACA boy staring right into the window of the Imperial Hive World Strip Club, learning some new things about Umis. They's more agile than we give them credit for. That's proper.
On that note, what a perfect way to transition, right?
However that connects to tier lists, you figure it out, because I've got no segue.
Yes. It's the orcs like doing the rating system or whatever, right? The thing
That's right.
I guess Facebook was first invented to be, or something like that.
We're going to put a tier list of all these Umi establishments. Arby's at the top.
Yeah. That is interesting. What would the orcs' favorite fast food place be?
Ooh.
Meaty. And
yeah, I think we need to break that out into an entire podcast.
Okay. Stay tuned for those of you listening. The future episode.
Oh, that's funny. So yeah, tier lists. This is a fun topic to talk about because honestly, tier lists are a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. I enjoy the heck out of a good tier list. I like looking at it. I like disagreeing with it. I like agreeing with it. I like learning from it. I enjoy tier lists.
Yeah, I think that it's often this polarized subject that probably doesn't need to be, you know? And it's like, I'm very agnostic about it. I've developed these lists. I've used these lists made by other people, or these builds, these concepts. I've gone completely opposite to that. So, I've done all of the above in, a couple years of kill teaming. And, the jury is not as necessitative. There doesn't need to be as much,
Doesn't necessitate.
Polarized. Yes, there we go. It doesn't have to be as polarized as people, I think, make it out to be. But it's an interesting concept. So it's like, let's talk about this because this is real talk for competitive kill team. Let's talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, the different aspects of that, and also the joys of running off meta, right? Because that's also a thing that we'd like to cover here.
Yeah, and, absolutely.
Boy, I got stories with that.
Don't we both? So the whole thing about tier lists is that, and why it's important to kind of understand when they can be a trap. I think that's probably the thing that we're going to loop back to a lot, is that you get a lot of information from a tier list, because typically most tier lists that are going to be posted or shared or discussed are created by people who have their finger on the competitive scene, right? They're active, or they're watching a lot of games, they're watching a lot of tournament results, and even if they're not going on Tier Maker and constructing and actually putting things down, when you say this team is better than that team, you're still putting together some sort of tier list, right? So ranking and distributing power levels and that all that kind of stuff, that's all under the same umbrella of a tier list. Yeah,
absolutely. And, it's basically, those of you that are listening that are hearing about what this, this concept, hearing about it for the first time, basically it's the standard way to find it is, maybe a website like Reddit or YouTube channel, something like that. Somebody will list things in order of good to bad, right? And so people will use that as an indicator of sometimes what to play. And understanding what they also may be encountering and need to beat and stuff. I think that's like the simplest way to put it.
Yeah. And that last point, I think, is the best thing about tier lists that you put out there, because there is a truth and an artificial side effect of tier lists that leads to a lot of these gatekeeper factions, or what you expect to see at tournaments, right? Because tier lists widely public, widely shared, widely discussed, right? So in a competitive community, you're going to see a lot of tier lists, and everyone's going to be abundantly aware of what rises to the crop, or top crop rising to the top, brother.
Cream of the crop rising to the top.
There it is.
You combined a couple there, but you know what? Every one of them was right.
I'm doing my best. But I did not grow up on wrestling. I am just trying to pick up what I get from osmosis from all the other wrestling nerds at LGS.
Social gestalt.
That's right. Oh, we're going to get some angry comments. I digress. So this information is just, you see the teams that rise to the top, that are consistently top tier, upper tier, that kind of stuff. And two things happen from that. Number one, they're very good. They have a lot of tools. They work very well against a lot of the other teams. So they're recognized as being good because they win tournaments. So you already know that these teams are likely going to be good. The artificial thing that happens because of the tier list is that we live in a situation at a lot of these tournaments that we go to where, if it's not something electronic where you could just download a workshop item, you're making an investment. And a lot of people want to make the right choice. They're very focused on not making a wrong investment. So you want to make the right investment, not just money, but also time, assembly, painting, and all that kind of stuff. Going to a tournament, paying your entry fee. They want to make sure that they're not starting behind the block by choosing something that has a proven record, right? So these teams that are on the top, you need to be prepared for them, but you also need to be prepared for a lot of them because of that secondary effect. So as a competitive player, my perspective on tier lists is I'm always curious to see, where others kind of think my favorite faction tend to fall. But more so, it's very interesting information for me to gather where the big baddies, where the gatekeepers are. And oftentimes hearing about the discussion around these tier lists, you can actually learn a lot of the tricks of why they're such big bads to kind of help you out in your tactical planning for your path to victory.
Absolutely. And I think you made a really good point on the aspect of the fact that this is a game that you got to pay money to play, kind of, you know what I mean? It can be an expensive investment. And you might come into this, it's your first day, baby's first kill team, and you're like, oh, Reavers look awesome. And then it's like, the tier list would have told you, hey, this thing has never even, podiumed, anything like that, a major, something to that effect. And so maybe, some people do that, maybe have a negative experience, and then I think become kind of reliant on the tier list forever after. Because they're like, I got burned real hard there, and then afterwards, it's kind of like once bitten, twice shy, I guess, right?
Yeah. That segues really well into the whole idea of tier lists potentially being a trap too. Oh. So okay. Were there any other kind of big positives? Because I gushed for a while about all the fun stuff and all the great stuff that I find from tier lists. Before we move off of that, what more did you want to say about that? Did you have anything else you wanted to touch on, or did I talk for too long?
No, I mean, it's just there's some of the good is like understanding why something's good. Like what I would say is if we're still sticking on positives of it, look and see why a team is meta if you can. A lot of times there's going to be a lot of time given to these lists already. So like they're not focusing on team number 52. So like if you're looking at something that's number 1, they're going to have a lot of information on that, and you can understand, oh, okay, they're good because of like this movement shenanigans and their shooty list or something like that, and you learn like, oh, grenades and movement and stuff are really good in this edition. Well, now that you know that, you could potentially see that somewhere else. So that to me is also another positive of the tier lists, that you can do, is use that as like a understanding or like a proof of concept maybe for what you could be trying to accomplish in another team, something to that effect, like, oh, this worked here, maybe I can do that with Necrons or whatever team that you play, something like that. I'm not quite sure if that's like an amazing tip, but it's something that I have tried to do a lot in the career, is like make X play like Y. kind of.
Are we going to talk about your drone termagants again? Hormagants?
I didn't plan to, but yes, that is definitely a thing. Last edition.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. No, I agree wholeheartedly with that. I really enjoy discussions around tier lists more than the actual power ranking, because that's where a lot of this stuff comes up. Because, I mean, there's a lot of ire around the fact that not every team has their artisanal, bespoke kill team yet, right? They're coming out and they've got a steady churn of them, but it's enough new stuff and enough steady click that there's so many new teams that are coming out that if you want to stay on top of meta, you're not only learning the new team, but you're also learning how they interact with all the other teams, and then you're also learning with how you're supposed to interact with that team. So when you go to these tier list discussions, you see where they fall. You not only see where the new team falls, relatively speaking, that's less important than why, right? Because if a new team comes out, let's just say, squats, Vespids, who knows, right? Ooh, Vespids would be fun. Vespids?
That would be...
Yeah.
Vespids,
I mean, I struck a chord with you talking about bugs in space, right? But anyway, new team, they come out. Inquisitor team, doesn't matter. It puts top of A tier. But then when you hear why, it's like, oh yeah, well, they really suffer under the pressure from Pathfinders with XYZ. The marker lights shut down one of their special abilities. Or they really have a great advantage over Plague Marines because they deactivate Disgustingly Resilience with certain ploys, right? So you hear that kind of information, and it's exactly what you're saying. Like, not only can you learn about what's on the top tier, but it also helps keep you up to date with where all the new teams are falling. Because with so many teams out there right now, there are so many factions you need to be aware of before you go into a tournament day, and all the tips, all the tricks that they can do, that these tier lists can kind of be a helpful guide for you to know the TLDR on a lot of the teams.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So jump into some potential pitfalls.
Yeah. One thing that you mentioned, and we'll kind of reverse back to that segue that you so aptly put before. It's the once burnt, twice shy, right? When Kill Team 2018 was coming out, there was a very infamous tier list that circulated in my play group at my LGS that was on Reddit. And one person quit. Just completely quit Kill Team, not having played a single game. Because he bought Warriors and Flayed Ones, and on this tier list that he found and he showed me, it was top tier, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. I remember it was 4 sections. In tier 4 were Orcs and Necrons and I forget who else. Top tier at that time, should be no surprise to veterans amongst us, was Death Guard. Early days, early days,
Very
right?
early days.
Yeah. So in the times of solitaire Kill Team, right? So he showed me the tier list and he said, well, this sucks. I bought all these models. I'm done. I'm just going to try and resell them somewhere. I'm not going to try and do this again because I messed up or something like that, he said. And that makes me sad thinking back on that now, because he had the most OP team in all of Kill Team there because he had the Flayed Ones.
Yes, right? Wait a little bit.
But irrespective of that, it was sad to see that tier list made him think that his team was unplayable. Yeah. Now, there are teams that can struggle and have a difficult time being top of podiums and stuff like that. I'm not under any disillusions that all teams are equal or anything like that. But the tier list to this guy was the holy grail of what you can play.
Yeah.
And he missed out on an entire hobby that who knows would have stuck with him or not, but never gave it a shot because of a tier list.
Absolutely. And that, to me, brings up 3 points. One, this is only an educated guess. Even if it's a very qualified person, only a very educated guess. I would say it's a snapshot in time and is not indicative of, the past or present, perhaps. It's just where something is right now. And third, I would say what you study, you change. that a lot of times once a big content creator puts something out there and says, look, this is the thing to beat, people have a tendency to start trying to beat that. And so you might see it taken down a notch or two once people figure out and have specifically been teching into that, because a lot of people don't build their own lists or decide some of their own stuff in there. And if you have a top player that has dedicated himself to beating this and then puts some information out there, you might find, they've got kind of a button against me now, and suddenly S tier is maybe A or something to that effect. So don't let it get you guys down.
And then a D tier goes up to C.
Right. Yep. Because it's like, there's not as much pressure now or something. When you see this team go away, now all of a sudden it's like when they have those forest fires or whatever, and then new things can grow from the clearing. Now sun hits this patch of grass or something.
Yeah. Speaking as a true Southern Californian, our analogy goes to forest fires.
Yeah, I think I'm getting to be true Southern California. I've been here like 10 years now, so I'm getting there.
Yeah, I think that's a great cautionary tale. Just because I had the very opposite reaction. Right before we hit record, I was actually telling Chris's story. For those who don't know me very well, I am I'm obsessed with nostalgia. I just love looking back on and reflecting back on things. I find a lot of value in that. And today, during my lunch break, I just went to my Reddit and I filtered all my submissions to the Kill Team subreddit and scrolled to the bottom. I was like, let's see where this whole path started. And my first post was, how do you orc? Or something like that. It was a classic new to this whole kind of internet Reddit. There was a typo in the title that I couldn't change because Reddit is Reddit. All that kind of good Reddit stuff, right? And there was this huge preamble in this post where I had to explain why I chose orcs, even though I know they're low tier, and why that's okay. I felt like I had to defend myself in that, right? And it just, again, shows this almost oppressive kind of feeling you can get, especially as a newer player, if you're making a decision to play something that's not the best. Right? And this was before I knew what LVO, SCO, BAO was. I had no idea there was a tournament scene. I thought I was just going to be playing with the same 6 to 8 guys that were at the LGS that picked up boxes with me. And then I was still worried about a tier list at this point. And maybe that was just the tournament player in the back of my, like the seed of the tournament player starting to grow and me worrying about competitive and tier lists and all that kind of stuff. But it still affected me in a way. It didn't dissuade me from it, and I'm thankful that it didn't, because I am so enamored with orcs, and they did me right and I did them right. But I still felt that pressure and that need to defend myself. It's like, you guys, it's okay. I know they're bad tier. Just tell me how to play them the best that they can be, kind of thing. And it was really fun to read through that and read through the comments and all the tips that people gave me. And it's funny to kind of see that, because now I'm on the opposite end of that conversation, and it was a fun nostalgic moment. But I'm not going to digress. I'm not going to diverge too much on the topic. But just like another example of how that tier list can potentially be a trap, just because that pressure that you feel like you have to defend yourself for not playing top tier.
Well, yeah, so what we saw, this is like baby Emmanuel at this time. He's coming into this game, and if you guys remember, we had a spirit animal faction episode, and he's discovering his spirit animal faction and saying, I want to play this at a time when people are saying this is very bad. And, being new to the game, all of a sudden there's a little bit of apprehension there, right? Like, am I making a big mistake? Or, I want to try this anyway. And then like you said, feeling the need to defend yourself a little bit, and that is definitely a potential drawback to these things, is that the person writing, doesn't have all the information in the world, but can go and post it. Like right now I can say, hey, Emmanuel, the average human being has 68 upper teeth. Right?
I didn't know that. Thank you for sharing that with me.
Right. I don't know it either, but I just said it on the internet.
I know.
Yeah. And so people can say that. So that's why, like earlier, I mentioned, look, this is, even if it's a very educated guess, a very, intelligent player, he's got some, verifiable data and statistics or references, stuff to back that up. credentials. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's spot on. And again, it can just be a temporary thing in time, because look at what you did. You know, you won, it was the SoCal Open that
2019.
year.
Yeah, about 9 months later. And the interesting thing about that is the list, looking at that post, the fun thing about it is the list that I ended up making as my kind of core team that I kind of would roster into and out of and all that stuff. The core of the team that I ended up playing almost all my games at SCO was that list that I made in January of 2019 based off of that post and the advice I got. So again, that snapshot. And the thing is, the tier list around that time was not wrong, right? But even after Elites came out, which SCO 2019 was with Elites, so again, different snapshot. Orcs were in a much better place in Elites than they were in the core book, right? And different snapshot. But if you went kill team tier list, that Reddit tier list would still pop up. So again, be careful with the tier list, make sure it's up to date and all that kind of stuff, because orcs were still bad at that point, technically speaking, if you Googled them, right?
Absolutely. But yeah, you know, kind of moving this thing along, another thing, I don't know if this is a plus or a minus, but I would say that a lot of top stuff is actually very flowcharty. And this is just like historic throughout, you know, the history of Kill Team. Basically, it's like certain things. It's okay. Turn one, you're doing this. You know, look at the Worthy Cause opening stack of Tau today, or you know the Ren and Rao Blackstone Guard of yesterday. You know, there's a lot of things that's very procedural, and that's kind of one of the inherent flaws, I think, of sometimes some of these tier lists. Is somebody gets on there and they can read, oh, this is top stuff, you know, this team's really good, and they go and they get it, but they may have missed the memo on how to pilot that, and that can oftentimes be super crucial, because like SoCal, we're talking about the one you just won, I took a co-third on that one, and that was with my shotgun spam cultists, right? Totally specific to Arena. And I get these messages afterwards, oh, I'm building your cult list, I'm going to run it at this tournament, this and that, that's open board, you know, and it was like, whoa, no, this is a door spam list, like this is cheese for doors, do not, you know, this is not, you're going to get blown to pieces. So you can miss the memo sometimes, and, you know, that's oftentimes a very big thing, you know. I say it again and again, a lot of people do not build their own stuff, you know, and I'm not talking about the models. They'll of course build their own models. I mean, some people I guess don't even do that, right? Because they'll have painted. Again, no shame, no anything.
Teach your own.
But it's like you might get into it and not know the why, and that can be a mistake too, because you have the top list and you're taking dead bottom. We see this all the time. People, you know, come in with the boogeyman and take last place.
And there's another side to that coin too, because I've also encountered players that will go for that top list and go for that very close to a competition that they're going to without getting the reps in beforehand. They might be going for a top list. They have the models. Maybe they have them from previous edition. Maybe they borrow a friend's army. Who knows? But they rapidly get the models together and they play this list. They haven't gotten the reps in with that list yet. Or this top list that's doing very well is just outside their comfort zone as far as their play style. They're trying to play a very shooty team when they're a lot more comfortable and they have a much more tactical mind for a more melee-oriented team kind of thing, right? So you can shoehorn yourself into a play style, or try and lean on your general kill team experience to help propel your lack of experience with a specific team, just to try and lean on their tricks and their shenanigans to try and propel you forward. And that can work a lot of the times. But a lot of the times it will also lead to blunder, because if that one trick doesn't work, you're not practiced enough to dig yourself out of that hole. So another way that like the tier list can help you find a very good team that's going to help you be effective very early. Help you be more effective than if you were to take something from the bottom of the tier list, but you have a better chance of stumbling and falling with a team that you don't have as much reps with. In the Legion community, Restart the Clock, They say you need at least 20 games with an army before you're ready to play it in competition. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. I don't know if 20 is the magic number, but you need more than just a handful of games with a specific army to have slogged through enough misfortune with that army in order for bad scenarios to not seem as overwhelming in a tournament day.
Absolutely. And, sometimes when you see the tier list, what you're seeing is the ceiling of possibility, I think, of what something can go. This is like a player who went to a tournament.
That's a great point.
And saw the fighter jet being piloted by that whatever guy of Ukraine or whatever, the dude, the fighter pilot, I guess, that was like real famous over there or something for a little bit. That's going to be very different than like, Joe, the new guy running the crop duster. He's used to flying the crop duster.
Hey, and Independence Day, the guy who flew the crop duster
Russ
saved the world.
Yeah,
Mr.
It's like Russ.
Yes.
Something, right? Yes.
But you make a great point, and it never clicked for me. Like you saying that right there, tier lists are skill ceiling lists. 100%. It never clicked for me. You have no vision of the floor of each of those teams. You see novitiates, you see pathfinders, you see commandos, all top, right? But void dancers are up there too, right? Void dancers have such a low floor, but that is not expressed at all on a tier list. It might be mentioned as they're ranking people. They're really easy to pilot, but they have a massive ceiling. It might be mentioned offhand, but if you look at a snapshot in time, you're not going to see that ceiling. And then the flip side of that is what happened with Vet Guard in the beginning of the edition. Their ceiling was hidden by a hatch that we didn't know was there. It was painted purple, and we had to find that hatch in order to actually find their ceiling, and that's how they bounced up. We were stuck on the first floor when they were a skyscraper, right?
Absolutely. Yeah,
and nothing changed. Nothing changed about the game.
Yeah, other things were getting buffed around them, and they still went and just went ham on it. And it's just like that's the thing too is there's a lot of moving parts to some of these top teams. It's like you said, the Harlequins being a good example of something that maybe you can come into early on and start having success with right away. Whereas some of the other teams that are right next to them on that list, you don't know that it's like, holy crap, like some of the decisions of, say, Pathfinders or something, like who do you put on objectives when every guy matters? This is something to think of, like who's sacrifice stuff. Did you know that the Transspectral is actually your secret awesome best grenadier, or not the actual grenadier model, and all these little tiny intricacies that back to your point in restarting the clock once again on Legion might have come after 20 games or so. You might have found your own thing, and figured that out. But going in without that, just taking pub stompy list. And thinking you're going to roll dice and do well sometimes doesn't go well, and that can be a potential trap. One of the ways that I've seen it become a trap many times is somebody chasing the meta, taking a list, and then they don't get round 4s because their mind is like, oh crap, you know what I mean? Like still figuring it out mid-tournament as dice are rolling, and then it's like, you know what? You're still not going to podium because you're not getting the points. You need that round 4. Yeah, you want that round 4 to make your top 8 cuts and all this kind of stuff.
Yep.
And that's difficult if you're hopping factions or meta chasing or trying something new off a tier list that just kind of got revealed to be really good or something to that effect. Because we've seen a lot of different presentations over time of like what people can do with information on a tier list and stuff. Yeah.
And to kind of bookend the discussion to a certain degree, one thing to mention about tier lists for this game specifically for Kill Team is that the delta's a lot closer between teams, I feel. When we looked at the previous edition, there were clear frontrunners that were just leagues ahead of others, right? And this edition, a lot of the teams are a lot closer. And the perfect example of this is Comrites, the Compendium Drukhari, getting top 8 at LVO. There were a lot of absolutely fantastic players at LVO. And Comrades made it to top 8, right? And what's that tell you? That's a team that at that time was C, D, something like that on most tier lists, right? Middle of the pack, right? Not terrible, not great. But in a good situation, played well, piloted well, they were able to excel and get to top 8. I mean, they didn't take the whole tournament, but, I mean, top 8 over, 55 plus people? That's a huge accomplishment. That's a huge accomplishment. It's top 8, I think, is a success at a big tournament like that at LVO. And Comrades getting there, that just shows how close this tier list really is, right?
Absolutely. And I think that could be a good jumping off point into perhaps the joys of playing something that's off meta. Right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Because, you don't have to be playing what somebody has ranked, at the top of the pyramid. This is amazing. This is going to win you games. And again, no shame if that's what you're doing. I've done that. We've all been there and messed with it. But sometimes there's an advantage to play the other guy, because it's like if you're on meta, you have to realize that you're the team people are trying to beat at that point, and there are people actively working. Like I remember after LVO, people were saying Tyranids needed to be nerfed. This is the first year. Active steps to do that, working to beat this 20-man list, and it sucked to have a target on your back that's like, man, the whole world's trying to beat my favorite team. I don't want to go play a bunch of other things right now. I want to keep playing my Tyranids, and everybody's trying to beat you. Whereas off meta, you're the match nobody expected. And I have had this wreck. I cannot tell you. Last edition, when list building was more of a feature, you'd have this thing like, you accurately predicted. It was like a Tiger Woods trick golf shot, just hole in one. Yes, this is the meta. This is what's going to be here, blah, 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 blah. And you show up and you look at the BCP pairing stuff, you know what I mean? The thing, and you're like, yes, it's these factions. I'm going to cruise through this. I'm going to crush. And then round 2, you get this off-meta jank wonk that you just you didn't have it in your roster to beat, you know? Because you were focused on these gatekeepers and things like that. You're like, no, I'm taking a suboptimal thing into this. Like suddenly, I don't know. It's just such a different thing. And it's probably pretty nice to be that other guy, right? Who's like the match nobody expected, that's wrecking runs, that maybe saw something that some other list or build could do, like, shooting, shooting's really big. And then they were like, well, this kind of does that, but also adds maybe like a durability aspect or something like that, that this other thing that with 7 wounds didn't have. And so maybe those things that had teched into that are not quite able to handle you, and you're still accomplishing some of the things maybe of this, ticking those, this is why the team is good boxes. So, yeah. Yeah.
Or just be Kroot Guy. I played a game with Kroot Guy. I don't want to out his name because I think it is so much more awesome that he is just known as this nebulous, mysterious Kroot Guy. But Kroot Guy on the West Coast, a lot of the major tournaments there, always brings Kroots. Faithfully brought Kroots all last edition. Playing very well with him this edition. And he's having fun. Playing all these factions is just fun. I played Orcs because they're fun. And I found a way to play a fun faction very well. Plenty of people were bringing Elucidian Starstriders. They were bringing Gellerpox. They were bringing whatever they want, man. It's such a fun game. And in the end, we're not in NASCAR. We're not professional golfers. We're not in some major league where podiums at these tournaments is going to make or break our livelihood, right? These tournaments are about engaging in the hobby in the way that brings us the most joy. If that's podiuming for you, awesome, go for it. If you're not going to have as much fun as you would, even if you're winning because you're not playing the models that bring you joy, then reevaluate what your goals are for that tournament and bring what faction is bringing you joy. Bring what's making you fun. My last note that I have here in my show notes is follow your hobby heart. There are 7 exclamation points after that in my notes, And that's how important that is to me. Honestly, follow your hobby hard. I mean, how excited was I in the preamble of this that I all my tournament prep for the next week is literally just putting together a base of operations to celebrate the team that brings me a lot of joy in this game, right?
Absolutely.
Coincidentally, they're very good. I'm not going to pretend like I don't recognize Commandos are very good, but even if they were bottom tier, like they would be what I'm playing with, honestly, because I'm following my hobby hard.
Absolutely. And another joy of playing off meta, I would say, is just you might find that rather than chasing the established best, that you do better leaning into a certain play style. Because for me, something can be 90% win rate, let's say. Let's just throw something out there. But I am happiest and most effective and able to leverage things the highest when it's a positional / shooty team. If it's got those two elements, that's where I thrive the most as a player. And you might find that you do better able to lean into a play style rather than a tier list, kind of a thing. So sticking with a faction or, like we talked about before, finding commonalities, things like that could be kind of the way to go. So I was just going to say, I was going to leave us with a interesting thought experiment. I'll try and put this in the anchor notes so you guys can chime in and let us know what you guys think. I had a question. I was going to say, would you rather have a team with a 75% win rate that could not win versus two factions in the game? So it's like if you never come up against those, you probably won this tournament. Or a team that has an even 50-50, plus or minus a tiny bit versus everything. And I'm interested to know everybody's thoughts on that. It'd be interesting because I think we'd get different numbers.
I will keep my lips sealed until we shut off the recording. I'll tell you my answer. How's that sound?
All right. Sounds good. So I hope you guys enjoyed this here episode. This has been Chris. Call me Beernid. You can find me on the internet at Beernid40K.
And I've been Emmanuel. You can find me on Instagram at eman.paints, where you can see what my orcs are up to on the daily. Not on the daily. I wish I posted that often. And you can find me and my buddy Alex on our YouTube at Strategic Advantage.
Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you again in 2 weeks.
Thanks for listening to the Killzone Podcast. Your home for real talk for competitive kill team. Brought to you by the Frontline Gaming Network. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode.